Welcome to Yoga 77. My name is Jackie, and we're going to go through a short, about 20-minute flow that is something that you can do whenever you feel like finding length and space in your body and just want to feel generally good. So come to your mat or a comfortable position, and you might be cross-legged or kneeling, and just find that comfortable seat. And just take a few wriggles, jiggles. You might have your palms facing up or facing down. And just observing how you've arrived today for your practice, knowing that throughout the next 20 minutes or so, everything I offer to you is an offering, and you can either take it or leave it. And just begin by observing your breath, noticing how your breath feels today. You might notice the spaciousness in your breath, or you might notice that your breath is a little tight or a little bit more restricted. Again, just noticing without judgment. And then if it's available to you, the invitation is to breathe in through your nose and out through your nose. And just take another 3 to 5 breath rounds just as you are, without having to change anything, just observing. And as you're ready, just blinking eyes open. If you close them down, and on your next inhale, bringing arms up and overhead. And then just taking your hand down to the side, reaching over. And you might take some movement here, just extending forward and back. Take it back overhead and just take it to the other side, noticing any differences from side to side. Noticing that space you're creating through the side body, that space between the ribs. Coming back center, and then just let that settle. And then as you're ready, just taking a rotation again to the side. You might take your gaze back over the back shoulder. Just notice how that feels through the neck. Notice those points of contact from your sit bones to the crown of the head, and try to think of like a lift through the crown of the head, so keeping the length through your spine. Maybe one or two more breaths here. And it might be your exhale that brings you back through center, and just take that to the second side. So again, allowing that length, and see if you can notice a softness through the shoulders. Again, your gaze might go out over the back shoulder, or you might prefer your gaze coming down to the mat or straight ahead. Again, just another 1 or 2 more breaths here. And then as you're ready, coming back through center. Again, just take any movement through the shoulders, maybe through the neck. You might even just tilt your head to one side and then the other, even taking some head rolls. Allowing a sense of heaviness through the head, drawing the chin down and across. Let's take a couple more of these if it's feeling yummy in your body. And as you're ready, just come back through center, and then we'll arrive in a tabletop position. And so you might just come over how it suits you. Find a position where the fingers are spread wide and the knees are about hip distance apart. So you might even just have a little peek back, check the feet are about parallel Tops of the feet are connected to the ground, to your mat. Just take any movements here sideways, just settling in. And as you're ready, finding stillness. Again, just checking the fingers are spread wide and shoulders are stacked somewhat over the wrists. And then the gaze straight down at the mat, a light drawing of belly button towards the spine. A light activation through your core. And then as you're ready, we'll take it through our cat-cow flow. So just lowering the belly. And notice your tailbone lifting. Again, just some little movement if that feels like it's inviting space. And allow the gaze just to come softly forward. So without lifting up and cranking the leg, just a soft gaze forward. And just take two or three more breaths here. So it's just lingering in your cow pose. Noticing the softness of your belly. You might even just rock slightly forward and back over the wrists. And then as you're ready, it might be your exhale, doming the spine. And take your gaze back towards your legs, grounding down with the hands, the fingers. Notice how your tailbone is tucked under. And again, just linger here in stillness or with a little movement for another 2 to 3 breath rounds. And then as you're ready, it might be your inhale that draws your body forward, lowering the belly. Come forward into your cow pose. And then flow straight through with your exhale back into your cat pose. Again, on your inhale, belly lowers, come through into your cow. Exhaling, dome through the spine, maybe on your exhale through to your cat pose. And just take another 4 to 5 of these, maybe 6, depending how fast you're flowing. Invitation to move with your breath. And then once you are complete, no hurry at all. Just start to draw your hips back towards your heels. You might widen the knees a little. Your big toes might be connected or working towards each other. So settling into your child's pose. You might have your arms extended along, noticing the palms of your hand, your fingers grounded into your mat. Or you might be up a little higher so that you're on your forearms. And again, feel free to take some movement, maybe side to side. Just as if you're encouraging and inviting space into the side body and through the spine. A sense of drawing the tailbone down towards the ground. And your gaze is straight down at your mat. And then just come into stillness. As you're ready, you might allow the forehead to come down to your mat, or if you have a block or a book nearby, you might be a little higher up, and just place a block or a book or a cushion, a rolled towel, blanket, just under the forehead. And so quite nice to have that support under your forehead. You can take little rocks side to side. And just allowing a softness through the neck, through the shoulders. And just stay here for another 2 to 3 breath rounds. And then as you're ready, just making your way back up to your tabletop. Removing any props if you chose to use them. Come back to your tabletop and then just draw back on your heels, and you might tuck your toes under and just roll out the wrists one way and then the other. You might have a bit of a shake. And then we'll arrive back in our tabletop position. Again, fingers spread wide. And then keep the toes tucked under. And just start to rock forward and back. Again, just noticing that sensation through the wrists. A light toning of belly button towards spine, and then coming into stillness before starting to lift your knees up and off your mat. And bringing your hips towards the ceiling, drawing your belly button, your belly towards your thighs. And then draw yourself forward, knees come back down to the mat, and they can keep reasonably wide. And then draw back your hips towards your heels, child's pose. Take that again. You might draw forward on your inhale, tucking toes, hips high, downward facing dog. On your exhale, drawing forward, knees come down wide, hips draw back, child's pose. And just take another 3 to 4 of these. In your own time, you might be moving faster or slower. If you're moving faster, you might do 6 or 7. Just notice the energy that's flowing through your body. You might start to lengthen on by extending further into your child's pose. And then starting to add a little bit more length to the backs of the legs. Knowing that your legs never have to be straight. Your heels do not have to touch the ground. You're just gently inviting that length. And again, you might rise up on your inhale. And then it might be your exhale that initiates your movement all the way back down. Again, just observing that flow, that connection between the movement and your breath and your movement. Again, once you feel complete, the invitation is to either stay in your child's pose for 3 to 5 breaths or to stay in your downward facing dog. Again, for 3 to 5 breaths. And so if you're in your down dog, you might choose to walk your dog out, meaning you're drawing one heel down towards the ground. Again, it might not come right down. Inviting a bend and straightening through each leg, and even some sideways movement, almost like you're swaying your hips side to side. And then you might come into stillness or not. And then we'll all meet in child's pose. Again, just taking another 2 full breath rounds. And then on your next inhale, draw yourself up towards tabletop. Tuck toes, hips high, downward facing dog. This time, from your down dog, just look to the top of your mat. Take little steps. Walk yourself to the top of your mat. Feet about hip distance apart. Again, you can bend through your knees to allow the belly to mount down towards the thighs, coming into your forward fold. Now here you might place your hands down on your mat and just start to walk your hands side to side. Just finding again a little bit more space through the side body, through the spine. You might prefer to come into stillness. You might even interlock opposite hands to opposite elbows. Notice if you can allow a little bit more heaviness through the head. You might bob yes and no. And then just gradually coming into stillness, and take 2 more full breaths in stillness, noticing your breath. And then on your next inhale, we're going to rise up. So it's like a gentle curling up. Let your arms and your shoulders be heavy. Ground down with the soles of the feet. Almost like lifting up through the kneecaps. Drawing in of your belly and then rising up. You might lift your arms above the head. And then finding that length, noticing that length. You might take your gaze up towards the ceiling, or you might be looking straight ahead. And then just take an extension over to one side. Come back through center, take it to the other side. Take one more of these to each side. Noticing the soles of your feet grounded down to the earth. And as you're complete, drawing hands back through heart center. We'll just take a little flow here. Inhaling as your arms rise. Exhaling, soft knees, forward fold, allowing your hips to come high, as much of a bend in your knees as you need. From here, rise up and find your halfway lift. Hands might come to shins or above your knees. A light toning of belly button towards your spine. So we're looking for a long, flat back, length through the spine. Come back into your forward fold, soft knees, plant your hands, and then step back to your high plank. And then in your high plank, again, some little adjustments if you need to. You might rock forward and back. And then a sense of pushing up through the heels of your feet. You might even just take some little glances back over your shoulder, a little bit of sideways movement. And then option here is to stay on your toes or come down onto your knees, keeping the arms close into your body, lowering with control. Really nice. And then once you've lowered your belly down, keep your hands under your shoulders, roll the shoulder blades back, and just lifting the chest so the gaze comes slightly forward. Notice the tops of your feet grounded down into the mat. Your kneecaps might float up and off your mat. And then on your exhale, lowering down. Just do 2 more of these. Inhaling as you rise, and then exhaling on your lowering down. Notice if you can keep your belly soft. Noticing more the back of the body, the upper back. And then option on the next one is to come into a little hold in your baby cobra. You might choose to hover your hands off your mat. And then again on your exhale, lowering back down. And we're going to draw ourselves back. And then bring your hips high, downward facing dog. Just hold for 2 breaths here. Notice if your fingers are spread wide. Maybe spread them a little wider. Maybe bring your hands a little bit wider on your mat to allow space for your shoulders. And lift your hips a little higher. A little bit more of a bend through the knees. And then from here, walk your hands back to meet your feet. Forward fold, and then again, rolling yourself all the way back up to your Tadasana mountain pose. I like rolling back of the shoulders. And then see if you can add some softness through the arms. Notice where your palms fall naturally. They might face inwards, they might face more to the front of the room. Check down at your feet. Notice that they're about hip distance apart or maybe a little closer together. You might even spread your toes out a little wider. And then just noticing the connection from your mat running up your center body, coming up through the base of the spine, through the heart center to the crown of the head. And again, just staying here in stillness, noticing your Tadasana, your mountain pose, noticing any sensations, tingling, a bit of energy. And we'll just take one more breath. And then from here, just making your way back down to your mat. So you might come through a vinyasa flow to make your way down. Otherwise, just coming down with me. You might have a kind challenge of seeing how slowly you can roll yourself down to your mat. Really nice. And then bring your legs in towards your belly. Give yourself a hug. Maybe a little rock side to side. And then taking each hand to one knee, just making circles with your knees one way then the other. Now you might choose to keep the legs together with your circles, or you might opt to take the circles in opposite directions. Again, just observing, noticing how that all feels in the pelvis, the lower spine. Really nice. And then as you're ready, let the feet come down and find your constructive rest position. So constructive rest is feet about hip distance apart. You might even have a little peek. Check the feet are about parallel. And then you might even just be able to tap each heel. And that gives an indication about how far away to have your feet. And then arms by your side, allow the shoulders to be heavy. And then notice that little curve under your spine, that natural curve where the spine is off your mat. And you might even be able to pop your hand through that curve. And then notice if you can draw your belly down, draw your spine down and close that gap so you can no longer get your hand through there. Notice how your pelvis has tilted back. Now tilt your pelvis the other way, forward, and let that gap come back again. You might come a little bit further, make the gap a little bit bigger, and then tilt your pelvis back again. Close the gap. Take that again, tilt your pelvis forward, make the gap come back. So your buttocks are staying on the ground, feet are grounded. And just take another few rounds of this. And then option is to keep working with these pelvic tilts, or next time your spine lowers down to the mat, your pelvis tilts back, ground down with the soles of your feet and allow the buttocks to float up and off your mat. Might just be a little bit, and then on your exhale let the spine articulate all the way back down, and then allow that pelvic tilt forward, allowing that gap to come back. So again, the pelvis comes back, closing the gap, lift your buttocks up and off your mat, and then again it's a slow articulation of the spine, lowering back down, and then that your buttocks land in that little tilt of the pelvis. Really nice. Feel free to take another 3 or 4 of these in your own time. You might notice that you feel like coming a little higher. You might be moving a little faster, a little slower. You might be working with your undulating bridges staying quite low. And then you might opt to come into a hold. So if you are holding, you might ground down a little bit more the soles of the feet, lift the hips a little higher. If you have space, then you might choose to interlock the fingers underneath your back and walk your arms and your shoulders under your back. And then a light drawing of chin towards the chest, and you might lift a little higher. Feel free to stay here for another 5 to 8 breath rounds, or you might still be working with those undulating bridges. Really just making this yours, noticing how it feels in your body, and then come back to noticing your breath, observing your inhale and your exhale. And then when you are ready to come out, just let go of the fingers if you've taken that option. Let the shoulders sort of come out, and then I like to come up on my toes. You don't have to, it just allows a little bit more length in my legs. And then it's a very slow articulation from the top of the spine, like I'm rolling down. Take it super slow. Trying to place each vertebrae down back on your mat. Really nice. You might just take those little tilts of the pelvis when you get to the bottom. Readjust, and then from here you might feel like bringing legs in towards your body or not. And then start to sit up for your final resting pose. So you might extend the legs out long, palms shining up. And just let the feet flop open for your final resting position, your Shavasana. Now, if there's any niggles in your lower spine, you might choose to have a bend in the legs. If this is working for you with legs long, feel free to stay as you are. Otherwise, bring the feet to the edges of your mat, a little wider, and then let the knees knock in together. And then we'll stay in our Shavasana for the next 2 minutes. And just scanning through your body, allowing softness, a sense of letting go. You might allow your eyes to close down. You might prefer a soft gaze. And then as I'm running out of a little bit of time today, I'm just going to end this first video on Shavasana so that you can opt to stay here as long as you like. Thank you for practicing with me today. Go well. Have a beautiful rest of your day or evening or week. Until next time, namaste.